I've always been fascinated with improvisation. So, from when I was very young, right, my favorite musicians were always the guys that never used to play a song the same way. I just loved it when someone just added their own little thing there. And that's really what attracted me to jazz was the freedom, the expression and the ability to just sit down and play anything. So I started doing what I thought I was supposed to do. So I learned things like scales, lots of scales. So I'm talking about the major scale, the minor scale, the modes, pentatonics, the blues scale. And when I sat at the piano, I would actually try and use these things. But something always just felt a little bit off. It sounded like I was just playing some random notes and maybe sometimes just, running up and down the keys like. And most of the time I was just putting my fingers down and just hoping for the best. I wasn't really saying anything. And what I found strange is actually the more I practiced, nothing really changed for years actually. I remember thinking to myself, why doesn't this sound like jazz? How come when Wynton Kelly plays, it doesn't seem to make any mistakes? I was thinking, well, what am I missing? Because when you listen to the great players, and I listen to a lot of great players, what they were playing never sounded random at all. In fact, if anything, it sounded very intentional. It sounded like they were actually telling a story. The story had an actual beginning, a middle, and an end. I started listening more carefully to players like Bill Evans and Keith Jarrett, and then I noticed something. These guys weren't just playing licks or lines. They were actually taking some small ideas, and then they would develop these ideas. They would develop them by sometimes just repeating the idea. Maybe they repeat it in a different place, or they might embellish an idea. And sometimes they would even stumble upon an idea and then respond to that idea. It was almost like they were composing, but composing in real time. And what really, really, really blew my mind and actually changed my life was when I listened to Bill Evans say,
"But I feel that jazz is not so much a style as a process of making music. It's the process of making music, making 1 minute's music in 1 minute's time. Whereas when you compose, you can make 1 minute's music and take 3 months to compose 1 minute's music. Now that's the only basic difference."
So it's not really about scales or patterns or licks. I was reading things all over like, take this lick and then play it through all 12 keys, which is not bad advice, but that's not really what jazz is ultimately all about. I remember also early on just coming across this book that had patterns. I won't really say the name of the book, but it's got some patterns. I'm not saying they're not useful. They're useful in some ways, but my improvisations kind of sounded like this. So I remember this pattern, for instance. Or sometimes it's... So I'd be playing a song like Autumn Leaves, and my playing might have sounded something like... In fact, it was definitely worse than that, But anyway, Bill made me realize that improvisation is really about creation. It's composing, but composing in real time. And you know what? No one had ever explained it to me like that. And then what this made me start thinking about was, hang on, if improvisation is composing, should I not be learning the same skills the same art, the same craft, the same skills that a composer uses. So the skills that people like Mozart used, those are really what I need to be learning, because the only difference, well, I mean, he used to do it too. He improvised all the time, well documented. So the compositions that we know, he probably spent a bit more time on those, but improvisation is using the exact same tools that Mozart, Beethoven, Chopin, Bach used to use. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by that in a jazz context. So most people just play scales like what I was doing here. And I guess there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there is, but the only problem is it doesn't really say anything. So watch this. I'm now going to take a very simple idea, just a few notes. Maybe I'll just take 3 notes. So that's a little motive. And what I'm going to do is sometimes I'm going to repeat it. Sometimes I'm going to change things slightly. So I might change the direction. I might change the rhythm. I might move it. And I might respond to it. And who knows, maybe a new idea will come up. So let me try this maybe in a song like There'll Never Be Another You. New idea. Rhythm, right? So hopefully you can hear clearly the difference between playing There'll Never Be Another You like that and just play. Okay. And I know you know, but I mean, things could be worse than this. But I'm really trying to give you a horrible example. But when you start taking an idea and developing it, it starts to sound more like a conversation, So I'm telling a story, I'm responding to what I've just done. So this is where a lot of people sometimes maybe get it wrong because they try to play what they've learned. So you've learned scales, you've learned maybe patterns, or you've learned a lick. And what they should really be doing is using what they've learned to create new things with it. So the whole point of transcribing or even learning a solo or learning a lick is so that you can use it for your own composition. And by composition, I'm talking about composing in the moment, which is exactly what improvisation is. So this is actually the second major mistake that I see musicians make when learning jazz. Yesterday I told you the first one, but this right here is the second one. And it's something that I'm going to break down step by step again in my free live masterclass tomorrow. And remember, tomorrow is International Jazz Day. Woohoo! And I'm going to show you how you can actually start creating your own ideas, how you can develop them, and how to make your playing sound more intentional. So, if your improvisation has ever felt like you're just playing random notes or putting your fingers down and hoping for the best, or directionless, like mine was back in the day, or even just now, so then you need to be there at this masterclass. I'm going to put the link to the Zoom meeting, because this masterclass is happening on Zoom. And then I'm also going to put maybe the time zones in the description so that you know exactly what time it is for you, depending on what part of the world you're in. So I'm really looking forward to seeing as many of you there tomorrow as possible. It's going to be really fun. And I know for sure that if you apply those ideas, your playing will be transformed forever. So if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. I'd really appreciate that. And if you've got any questions or comments, please throw those in the comments. Give this a thumbs up if you enjoy this. And really hoping to see you tomorrow, International Jazz Day. Let's have fun. I'll meet you there.